I am walking in a street in a village called Rothwell in Northamptonshire in England. To my background you see a village street. By village streets we are talking of rural. This Rothwell is a more or less like a rural village, and it consists of farms and some village centers. The village centers are more or less like small towns, but they are very compact. They probably have many years, centuries of culture, building double-story houses with second floor or with first floor or even second floor above the ground floor. Partly it was a question of protection, because there were always raids from Europe, from the Scandinavia. You know about the Vikings. So defending a village was very important. So the entire population would build very closely, unlike in our villages, which were each homestead is separated by some distance, or even some hundreds of meters. But here they build compact. In some villages you have streets, but the houses are more like built as a one structure following a street, with just compartments or flats, with a town wall, like in Jerusalem, where you have a wall surrounding the entire city. So a large amount of population was concentrated in one area. This was mainly for defense as well, but recently it's now done for population explosion. England is about the size of Zimbabwe, so they now require that. Of course, in our case, Zimbabweans are only about between 15 and 16 million people. England is 60 million people on almost the same size. So villages do look like this, with houses with double story. They are not as impressive in terms of space. Of course, it's easy to provide amenities, healthcare facilities and all that stuff, because you just find people in a particular location, instead of our rural areas where we are geographically spaced. Our environment, of course, in Africa there were very few invasions. Among the Shona, we only got invasions when the Ndebelés came in, and when the Rhodes and his pioneer column arrived, and therefore the issue of protection was not really something we had built in among the Shona population in Zimbabwe. So that is quite helpful for you to appreciate why villages are like this. So right. This was just a brief background to this environment where I'm walking. But today I wanted to talk about something under the craft of research. In the previous videos, the first video, I talked about how to state a research problem, and the second video was on where to find a research problem. Right, today I'm particularly interested in talking about one item on the question that has always been burning in Zimbabwe's in various officials, especially in Zimbabwe, in government, even in universities now. Universities are under pressure to do research that addresses the problems of the country, to create technologies that could create industry in Zimbabwe. Of course, this is a challenge to universities, but universities are also challenged to be productive, to go further than just create prototypes, and then proceed to create companies that can manufacture, that can go into manufacture. So that those are some of the issues that the pressure didn't start now. It actually started long back. And I remember at that time I was just graduating from the University of Zimbabwe in the early 90s, around 1990 somewhere there. There was pressure that universities should transform their education to something that can, even colleges, and therefore that's how attachment started. Because at that time it was not about production, creating of technology, creating factories and industries. It was about the fact that our graduates are not employable. They claim that they know theory only, and then therefore they are useless. That was the conclusion, and therefore they introduced what they call an attachment, which was a load of rubbish and waste of time. For me, I participated in that. I was one of the first lecturers who, not that I was supporting it, it's just that it was a requirement. But we met to create policy on how we can introduce attachment in our education system, especially at tertiary level. It started mainly with technical colleges, and then it was spilled over to universities, and NAST was one of the first one to experiment with that idea. UZ for a long time was resisting it correctly. They were correct to say we don't need attachment. University is not the responsibility of the university. And Graham Hill was Vice Chancellor, and Kamba was also Vice Chancellor when these issues were being discussed. And so even today, I think it's a waste of time. The university's job is to take a kid who knows nothing, who knows no mathematics, nothing, no advanced areas, and then transform them into somebody who is equipped, who knows something about these various areas, accounting, agriculture, and all these other areas. They do practicals that are enough for students to understand concepts. And then this graduate is someone you can talk to. Industry can now take them and then train them for the rest of their life. Yeah, they should not waste the resources of the university, wasting time, student time and effort, and lecturers' time in engaging in what they call attachment, which is not ideal. In fact, out of a class of 30 or 50 or 100, which I used to have, only 1 or 2 were properly attached in an environment that is very educational, very good at training the student, but the rest were just loafing around, wasting a year of study. So these days I said, okay, I would say, instead of sending them on attachment, give them to me for a year. We will do research and publish and produce prototypes in an academic environment. It still works. We can still make these students be productive in that area, but ideally let the university teach according to the curriculum for a specific period, short period if possible, 3 years, 4 years, and let the student go into industry. It's up to industry to take them. They are not blank. They are not like somebody who doesn't have a degree. So it's not true that they are useless, they know nothing. They do know something. You can train them to be more productive in your company, but don't waste university time and resources to do that. So the history goes back. It started with that attachment thing, which is a waste of time. Countries here, they have done away with it. If a student wants to go on attachment, they say yes, go, but we are not starting to teach. You can join later, but you'll be behind. It doesn't matter. Because you like it, they say we encourage you to do it, but We don't wait for you to come back to attachment so that we can start teaching you. You can come back anytime, join, but the other guys will be gone. Doesn't matter. So a lot of these countries, in advanced countries, they are the ones also who were saying, your education is what, and yet if you come here, that's what it is. They just teach them the way we teach them in Zimbabwe. Yeah. And companies are aware that they don't know, they may not know the specifics of your company job. So teach them for just 6 months, and after that they are brilliant. They are different from just a guy who is not educated from the street. They are different, these graduates, and they are brilliant. In most of them, they are innovative. Right. So it is important to realize that. So then after the attachment concept, there was this idea that now the drive is that we need to create companies, we need to create research that lead to technology that can develop the company, that can lead to industries in Zimbabwe. Yeah, I think that needs to start not from the students, even from the lecturers. The owners pressure should be on the lecturers as well, because they are the researchers. Students are not really expected to create industries. It is the lecturers who now know, who are mastered the basic theory, and they should now move from transition to practical. And obviously, when you do research, you are researching on a very important problem. So the idea is that take your research and, proceed to create something that works. So that one is acceptable. Right. So now as researchers, you are the ones who are being asked to do research that addresses the problems of Zimbabwe, and that also addresses issues like unemployment, building technology that really is made in Zimbabwe, and all that stuff. Now, the question is, as academics, suppose you want to do PhD, how do you make sure that the research you are doing meet the academic goals of being innovative, unique, and a major contribution, while at the same time addressing the problems of Zimbabwe, which may be simple in the sense that the technology already exists. It's just a question of these people putting effort to take the existing solutions and use them in the country. So sometimes some of our problems in Zimbabwe they are not problems to humanity. Humanity has solved those problems. So the question is, how do you balance those requirements, and what happens in other countries in this area? Right. Maybe let me start from my experience as a researcher in other countries other than Zimbabwe. Right. In most cases, research is done in collaboration with industry, or in collaboration with the domain expertise that you want. Or they are also multidisciplinary. Like if you take people in agriculture, vanoziva kurima vanotorima. Vanhu vanograduata vachizoita vanoita agriculture vanogona kutorima nokuchengeta mombe nokuita zvose zvinodiwa. Hapana zvavasingagoni, saka they can produce. Now it's a question of enabling them. Right. Ma-accountants edu anobva pa-UZ nepama-university mamwe ese nevana Mutare, vana Midlands, or vana Manicaland, Midlands, Nast, they are already right. I am now entering a garden. So I was passing through this gate, and I'm going through a garden that, there is also urban agriculture here. Vanhu vanogara muHarare vanoita zvimunda around. Vanoita zvimunda around, saka kunoko vanorimavo. Like if you look at behind me, there is a mom, a dad who is working on the soil. There are also kids playing around. He has his own kids. Also, they do come here. So I also have a small piece of land here, which I do some agriculture. So I'm trying to build some greenhouse so that in winter we can plant some vegetables. So you can see this guy Arikurima beds. I may not be able to show you because my camera currently is not that flexible. But right, back to the topic under discussion. The question is, how do we balance these things? Anyway, I probably need to pause here because I'm passing through this guy. I need to greet him. Hi. How are you? Oh, nice work. Right. We are building some greenhouses there. Yeah. So, but we are late. Winter is already around. We should be planting. Yeah. But
so I need a greenhouse because so much fun.
Yes. Okay. I'll just go and see what but I'm not working today. I'm just picking something.
Yeah.
Yes.
The good part, taking what we can have.
Yes. Right. So, how do we go about it? Right. If I can show you, maybe before I do that, let me show you my area. I'm building those. See those frames. That's a greenhouse that I would like to make, and there are two of them. So I was here. Yeah, usually I work on this over the weekends or sometimes during lunch. We planted some things, but because there was no summer this year, it was cold, so we decided, look at that. My God, last night there was frost. If you can look at this, we had planted some pumpkins, but there was frost last night and all the leaves are dead now. So winter is here. Welcome to British winter. Right, if you see this structure, those are the greenhouses we are trying to construct. There are two of them. There is this one and this one. I did the digging of this yesterday so that we can put the cover. After that, we have a small garden in here. Already there was serious frost last night, so it's imbambairates. So I know it's mkati, but maybe now they are going to die before I finish my greenhouse. But anyway, tinodzvara dzimwe kana mbeu dzacho dzaramba ndozotora kuZimbabwe. Not a big deal, right? So that's basically an area that we are planting up to the Kuvaku Road, all the way up to that Chinangori shed chandoisa tools. And also we may want to collect water from the roof because hakuna mvura kana uchipisa iri summer, things can burn here. And that's it. Right, back to the topic. Right, the question is, how do you balance the fact that you want your research to be relevant in terms of the demand that we must research solutions to Zimbabwe's problems, but at the same time meet the academic requirement on a global scale on the planet, because PhDs should not just be a PhD in Zimbabwe only, otherwise it won't be recognized. It must be a PhD that has got also weight, some degree of weight around the world. Sometimes PhD is just a training you can go to funge like a researcher. In that particular case, sometimes the requirement yokuti unofanira kuaddressa problem yenyika at an individual level may not be that important, but at the end of the day, what is important is that tine munhu anofunga like a researcher who can solve. If you give him a problem, a substantial problem, he can solve them. So the training you need is a way to think and a way to how to approach problems not without necessarily emphasizing kuti chaunofana kuita during the PhD should be relevant. This is what some other countries focus on, because one doubt we quickly get trained, and after that it were deployed either in academia or in industry, and you start producing ndo paunozoita manje something chavano expect to know ichi chine musoro. So it applies to those who have PhD as well as those who are also still doing their PhDs, or who are learning to be researchers. So that is important to everybody. So of course there is no specific answer to that question, but I can only give my own opinion of how this could be treated, how you can approach it. I would say first and foremost, make sure that your research problem is a gap on a planetary scale, on a global scale. In other words, if you look at human knowledge today, is there a gap in knowledge? That's why you do a literature review. Or literature review on Zimbabwe chet. On the whole planet. And then you find a gap. Right. Once you find a gap, this gap is academically sound. It's academically considered to be a key research problem, right, in your area. Right. Wadaro manchi. Also chitarira around, once you have that, ningati problem here enganzini iri important for Zimbabwe ayo. Iri important for humanity on a planetary scale. Right. But this problem in a practical relevance or practical application, ndo paunozotarira manje mZimbabwe kuti okay, in the area of the practical application here problem, what are the challenges? Right. Ndo paunoita bring in the Zimbabwean context kuti okay, here is a tine problem, right? But this is assuming kuti watora that approach yandakataura kuti no, you first look at the literature or find a gap in the literature as a source of your research problem. But sometimes a source of your research problem is a real problem in Zimbabwe. Like problem yekuti kuma rural areas tina vanhu vanogara vane chronic diseases like vana diabetes, vana HIV, anogara navo until the rest of their life. Vana access to a doctor. Vanongoenda kuka clinic kane ka nurse aid, not necessarily even a fully qualified nurse. Unogona nguva a nurse aid, semi-qualified nurse. And saka then you say, okay, what challenges are we facing? Like Caroline is trying to maybe inspired by something from the literature which shows that when you are looking at Bayesian network reasoning, which is probabilistic causal Bayesian network reasoning, there are various types of reasoning which are not fully exploited. Right. The question is, why are they not exploited? Also, can we develop apps that exploit them, that can assist us to exploit them? So this is a planetary problem where people are using Bayesian networks, and with respect to healthcare, they are only using a small portion of the capabilities of reasoning capabilities of Bayesian networks. Saka, and mostly these apps are not being adopted, and yet there is a lot of potential in them. In other words, my developers have not yet developed AI with reasoning that exploits all forms of reasoning. Right. This is a global, but also no. I now want to apply this to the problem of chronic diseases, and then see how we can fully exploit all the reasoning capabilities. Whether we need to develop some forms of paradigm that allow us to apply, to come up with full exploitation of the reasoning capabilities. Although I know, in Zimbabwe we have a problem. Vanhu suffer from diabetes. They are not properly managed. They only access to a clinician who is semi-qualified in a clinic. Iri kure futi. Vamwe vacho vanofamba kuenda kure. Kuti vazowana even vasvika ikoko, the person may not really know much about the problem you are suffering in detail enough to advise you. They might have a rough idea, yes, but So you now want to develop an AI that probably runs on their mobile phones. My smartphones are Tavana in Zimbabwe. And my apps could be installed potentially on those, right? Then you see, can we exploit that? Then we'll develop a technologies, apply those forms of reasoning. So you can find a problem, then find an area in Zimbabwe around you which is an application domain. Aisha nyika yedu yangu fana in any other country. So then what are you create prototypes that can potentially be commercialized? Probably that's the best way. That's one way to do it. If you are already inspired by a problem you're existing, like I cannot give you a lot of examples here, but there are a lot of projects I have in mind, which I know, probably because I don't want to preempt my students to investigate those challenges. But it is possible for you to make your research, even though it's internationally relevant, to make it directly relevant to these areas. So, in short, the CoR for research to be applied to Zimbabwean problems is very relevant, and it's possible for us to look for case studies where we evaluate our research contributions to Zimbabwean problems, and possibly come up with products that we can manufacture, and even create companies out of them. Normally, in my experience from these countries is that we do research. This research already in potential a company can take it up, in a government organization, because research actually in consultation with those people. It's just because some people in some of those organizations, people leave, and those who are not interested, and so you do find a lot of theses relying around. They are not really being commercialized or whatever. And of course, it will take another country, someone and also own research yako, otozo ishandisa, and then they come up with something concrete. And I have had the same situation happening to my own research. Now there is another place, another university where they took up some of my research. They go ahead and start manufacturing and creating something. But here research in one of these institutions. So it does happen. It does happen. Though Pauno Zona no research in an impact in the world. It has impact because some people are taking up some of the ideas and actually applying it. In computing, normally you see your ideas in software. Vanozotora that idea. Some of them acknowledge it, some of them don't. But good people will acknowledge and approach you and talk to you a bit and tell you and get more ideas from you and so on. But acknowledge after you research. Though sometimes that's what you need, because proof. You can then prove good research yangu in impact around the world. Look at this project yakaitwa Navava, project and all that stuff. No, research in some degree of impact. You can put those things on your CV, and that's why when you have a approach to, we are using your idea here. You're a publisher on this, and all that stuff. So I also store that those communications as evidence of impact of your work. So yes, it is permissible to do that. Nokuti paone ngokaita research in an institution yakazo where you didn't have an opportunity to produce something, but others can continue the research, also it further with modifications, with the addition of their own ideas, or improve that project. So and then I support that idea. Research in Zimbabwe should be relevant to the country, to Zimbabwe. That is important. I think as we work, if you guys would like to continue as a community here and we start working on projects together, we need to do that. We address my problems where academically sound and correct around the world, but at the same time tinozo ma-applier to the situation yeZimbabwe. In low resources, we also need to think about how do we address issues of power. Tina power cuts, tina potholes mumaroads edu. Tinoconsider zvose tozo make sure technology dzatogadzira dzinoshanda even in our environment, but dzinoita embed the contribution iri academically sound on the planet from a worldwide perspective. So that's important. But also in Zimbabwe, we need to go further as well. No, ideally, we can actually come up with a business idea. We should go ahead and do the business idea aspect. Probably is the only place where we can do that. In other countries, a lot of countries are way ahead, very ahead. Research that sometimes it based on the assumption you could kunotorine technology and we build on top of them. Saka mimi kuti muzoti muite technology then they can only be built on top of a technology zeimwe company yakato inotori existing. Iva ndo vanogona to exploit some of the research vachiita improve their products. Isusu in Zimbabwe we can already implement it from the beginning, from scratch. Saka it's the place where yes, research might actually lead to something, some product of our own, even if it builds on top of the world, other knowledge we get from the world, we can still do that. Right. So in summary, we can balance kuti research problem yedi my problems edu ato research about are they academically sound from a global perspective, but at the same time the case study where we try to prove that our contribution works, we do it for challenges in Zimbabwe. The other approach is to be inspired by my problems in Zimbabwe. Then tozoita look for a research problem. It is valid academically from a global academic perspective. Then pato address that problem. It is academically challenging around the world. No tozoita embedded in the solution to the problem we have identified in Zimbabwe. Application to main problem. They are taught motivating problem. But it's not necessarily the research problem. But you know, sure, it's a motivator to look into a particular research problem. Kata address to address this particular problem using our contribution. So that's in summary, that's what I wanted. Now, this video, about 30 minutes. Of course, I was interrupting it with a bit of my background here. So at the moment, as you can see, I'm still in the garden, but the garden unopiwa a piece of land next to other guys. Ukaona ma structures esamona kuzumwe zviri gu. Some people vanouya vachingoita basa kunoku. Just more like a hobby, but you eat also what you work on instead of going for an exercise. So sometimes I do take a walk mainly because sometimes when you are working on a computer, you need to exercise your body. And these days you can work from home as well. So, and then I do take a walk normally every morning, which is very important because my work involves just sitting on a computer, doing research and all that. It's not physical, but I do come here also and exercise. The Chishandam garden. But at the end of the day, I want to eat vegetables. So that's another issue. Okay, good luck researching. I hope our community will continue to grow. I also hope you guys also start recording these videos as well and share your experiences. Even share innovations you find around Zimbabwe. A lot of our people in our towns and cities are innovative. A product is very important where worth sharing from a research perspective. It's important. Like Pandaenda Zimbabwe briefly the last 2 weeks, I saw someone who could gather bits and pieces of metal over a gadzira machine, gadzira timber. And to tema miti ye timber yai. Panama machines anozokata mazimuta yaya achita timber. This guy anoshandisa mavhiri emota, rims, achitsvaga masimbi around and ogadzira machine isingatofi, it's actually stronger inozogadzira that timber accurately, cutter straight and so on. But ushayiwa kuti munhu anogona kutomanufacture this machine. We can create an industry out of it, and then we to vanoziva Internet of Things, we can team up with this guy with Internet of Things. He's a pharmacist, but an expertise in engineering as well. Saka he's manufacturing these machines. He's good at engineering. Saka I believe people like that vakalinkiwa nama universities. Anyway, as a pharmacist, he's already familiar with the university environment, so he could be invited to campus. Vanvoona kuti machine yake, can we do a little bit more research around it to ederawo macomponents ake kune zvakevo achiimprove avo tozo manufacture combined naye. Maybe yeye unogona kuva namashares akakura unokuda kuti anei ndiye akatanga neidea isi tozongoimprove nokuisa zvima elements zvemacomputers, Internet of Things and all that stuff. Total manufacture, you create a company out of that. Saka when you walk around kuna Nambare huku and anywhere where there is some degree of innovation within the population, get those guys to campus, and then come up with some research, your monitor embed into the products, and then create a company, more manufacture. Right. I hope our community will grow, as I was saying, and then we share more, and we need more content in our community. You're going to share some of the things. With that, goodbye.